I may have already weighed in on this, but it's been brought up because this morning I noticed this in the recycling bins of my neighbors. But most recycling is a scam. There were articles that came out during quarantine about how most recycling ends up uh, shipped to either Mexico or China, a lot of which sinks in the ocean. That garbage patch they talk about could have been contributed to by that, and that, or a lot of it is burnt. And this is not a false thing. I've known this for a long time. When I was 20 years old, I lived in an apartment above the office of a business called Rieger and Sorgungsmühle in Neumarkt am Wallersee, Austria. Our landlord came to us within a few days of moving in and told us that it was okay if we simply threw our trash out the window. He His office was situated here, and there was a place to drive in, and on the other side was a big area where the trucks would come in and just dump everything that they would pick up. And then employees of his would sort through whatever they brought back and actually pull things out that were easy and affordable to recycle. There were two train tracks that came in. It's different now if you look it up. But there were two train tracks that came in, and the cars were loaded with either recyclables or with stuff that would be trucked out to some other country where it was burned to generate electricity. Probably Slovenia, Croatia, Czechoslovakia. I'm not libeling any of those countries. It's just that's something that they could do for cheap to get energy. And I know he told us metal is always recyclable, but he told us to help ourselves anything in the trash pile. So one day when we were over there fixing our bikes, he looked over and all right, because we were taking parts off of working bikes to replace the broken ones on our bikes. So there was no net loss to him because we were actually recycling and taking parts that no one wanted that we could still use and returning them for broken parts that had no other function other than to be melted down and remanufactured. So I learned this a long time ago that most of recycling is a lie. And Austria is a country that tries very, very hard to encourage people to not waste. It's one of the most pristinely beautiful nations in the world, particularly in Europe, and they try and keep it that way. In fact, I think back then, if they caught you doing this on purpose, you could get fined for not recycling correctly. So, flash forward to America. So, one of my neighbors had his recycle bin propped open so I could see it because he had shoved a painting into it. Okay. Now, paintings are not recyclable. You can resell them, but you cannot recycle them. There was also a pizza box that I could see right alongside the painting in his recycle bin. I didn't look at anything else. This sufficed because although the pizza box is recyclable, the food that may be attached to the inside of the pizza box will render the entire container truck that picks up all of this as potentially contaminated, which means that someone will either have to sort through it like they did at Rieger, or the entire thing will simply be incinerated or buried because it's not worth it. Let's come to campus. Tuesday, I was talking to a student, and as we finished up and she parted to go to class, she took her drink container and her food container and put the aluminum can in the recycling bin and was looking at the other one. I said, "Are you trying to figure out if it's recyclable?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "They don't actually recycle here anyway." We have three janitors during the day for the entire campus. So they do not have time to take the bags of trash and recyclable out and then sort them. So everything gets picked up, no diss on them, and thrown into the dumpster altogether. So the recycling is a feel good scam, even here where I work. The simple fact of the matter is that most things are not easy to recycle. Glass is easy to recycle if you sort it by color and don't break it with the lid attached to the nape of the neck, because that's different recycling for glass and for metal. Some plastics are not recyclable. There's a little triangle symbol at the bottom with a number inside of it, and some of those numbers are recyclable. Some of them are things you don't want to have food in, and some of them are not. I know what some of them are, it's not relevant, but you'll see at companies like Nalgene, because we use it here, I don't have any in my office, but Nalgene, I think, is number 5 on the bottom. And those are things where that particular polycarbonate does not leach into your the food that you put inside it. That's also important for us because it means we can heat it. Not as long as we don't put it on fire, we can heat it and do things with it, and it won't crack. That's why we use it. So it's a more sturdy plastic than the others. Metal, but they sort it by type. paper and cardboard as long as it's not contaminated with other things. And if you go look at businesses behind the businesses, they'll have separate cardboard sorting and binding because cardboard is very awful to stack. I think that's the only thing they really recycle here is cardboard. And we do some paper recycling only because we shed like student papers, and that goes into a shredder, and that is recyclable because it's all paper. And they know it's all paper because it's all things we had to shred because we can't let people know what it says. Unless if the students don't want it. So I have a big stack here. Yeah, big stack there on the bottom shelf of things from last semester that I'm going to go shred here before I leave for the day. That of things that paper might be recycled because we know it's all paper. And if they recycle it, then no one can reconstitute it and figure out what the students wrote or said or what scores they got. But most recycling is a lie. Even during quarantine, I remember they weren't taking metal, particularly aluminum, because they didn't want the recycling workers and the people who collected it at the collection stations to catch a certain virus. I'm probably not still allowed to mention on YouTube without this video being removed, but they stopped taking it because of the medical risk associated with it. And so no metal was being recycled. Nothing was recycled during quarantine period. Ships sat offshore. China refused to take them. I have no idea what happened to them. I'll bet a lot of them were scuttled and are now at the bottom of the ocean. So there is a recycling that works and there's a recycling that doesn't work. There are things you can recycle and there are things you can't. When this breaks one day, this will go into a broken glass container because it will probably break with chemicals in it and then it cannot be recycled. But if it was empty and clean, you can recycle it. This, eventually, if I clean it, will be recyclable. But if I don't clean it out, it's food contaminated. I don't think this is recyclable. These aren't recyclable. This is a jump drive. I don't have any metal here. So I have a quarter. But anyway, people don't recycle those. They reuse them. And that's the real thing, is reusing it. At the top of the stairs in my grandparents' basement growing up, there was a sign that my grandmother cross-stitched. And it said, make it do, let's say, use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. And that's the recycling that always works. We throw away so many things that can be reused. And I didn't think about this before I came, but Tuesday I was wearing a pair of pants that's been repaired. I'm not from that generation, but every time we would leave, we had to go up the stairs, see that sign before we would leave Grandma and Grandpa's house. So it became ingrained into my head. And wherever possible, I will reuse things. Or I find things that I can reuse so that I don't have to throw them away and use something else. I hate single-serve plastics. I hate single-serve things. I even wash utensils, plastic forks and spoons and things, and will reuse them if I can, because I believe that's the recycling that actually works. A lot of the things you've been told about it, a lot of the things you believe don't work because of people like my neighbors and people 20 years ago in Austria who don't understand that they have made the things that were recyclable unrecyclable by combining them with things that are not. I know I've seen styrofoam in the recycle bin. I have seen bicycles in the recycle bin. Today, there was another guy, he had 2 fishing rods in the recycle bin. Okay, the recycling company does not recycle fishing rods. If you want to recycle fishing rods, I thought about picking them up and taking them because I probably could have rebuilt them and that would have recycled them. But the company isn't going to do it because it's mixed materials. Even if you take something in, you'll get less money for it if they have to separate it. Like you bring a car radiator in, if you cut the plastic ends off yourself, you get more money because it's just the aluminum in the center, because you've already taken the plastic off, than if you bring it in with with the plastic ends still on it, because they have to take it off or they can't use it because it's contaminated. Too many people are using their recycle bins as an overflow garbage can so they don't have to pay an additional fee for a second garbage can. The recycling guy doesn't know because the lids are shut, dumps it in the top, and I'll bet bottom dollar that some significant fraction of that, maybe even as high as 95%, ends up in the landfill or the incinerator because it's not worth the time and effort for somebody, especially at American wages, to sort through it and fix the things that you made wrong. So if you want to save the planet, you not only have to do it, you have to teach other people how to do it correctly. And there are ways that work and there are ways that don't. And as long as we continue to either be too lazy or too uneducated to do it the right way, it's not going to happen. And nothing we do will help. I think that's why things aren't working, is because well-meaning individuals who are ignorant of the actual consequences of their actions and the implications of their decisions are messing it up while telling themselves they are part of the solution. They are not. Anyway, for some food for thought from a scientist who knows a little bit about recycling from where I lived. Herr Rieger, if you ever find this, I loved living there. This is not to diss on you in any way. I really appreciate the education. I hope you do too. Godspeed.